Good morning. It is Brian. It is the Art of Startup War. Every week, you know, I am here for one thing and one thing only, and it is to share with you an incredible company that we had the good fortune and the privilege to be able to invest in. Sometimes, only sometimes, that company is doing something so incredibly important in the world that my head hits the pillow just a little lighter in the evening because I know that on the road to making gobs and gobs and gobs of money, actually, we make such a difference in the world because we've been a part of this great journey. So, this is that company. Like, it's not one of those companies, this is that company. And you're going to find out why on the call. And some of you are going to shed a couple of tears, and others of you are going to think it's not possible, Brian. I don't believe it. But all of you are going to want to fix this problem. And all of you are going to applaud Maya for everything that she's done to build what she's doing. So, without further ado, I want to welcome Maya to the show.
Hello, I'm Maya from Peak. Super excited to be here, Brian.
Awesome. And today we are going to talk about peak. That is it. I want to talk at the beginning, and we're going to go into the solution and what you came out with and how you came. But first of all, I want to just go to the problem. I want to talk about the genesis of the idea, like what you are doing in the world, especially in relation to children, which I believe is saving children on such a high level. Like, it's not something that you come across every single day. Like, what was it that made you think, I'm going to dedicate my entire life to building a technology like the world has ever seen, solely with the intent of protecting all of our little ones?
Yeah, that's a good question. The genesis story for Peak, it's kind of twofold. On the one hand, I've always been quite entrepreneurial, and so um, there was a specific event where a major adult entertainment company kind of crumbled before my eyes because they got smacked with a $600 million lawsuit for having child pornography on their site.
Mhm.
And my business brain got going. And that's when I started looking into the issue more. As a machine learning engineer, I was thinking, how is this a human problem and a human solution? Like, that doesn't make sense. I looked into what this company was doing for moderation. And that's when I discovered this company and companies like it aren't just, not trying, is that they don't have options in front of them for how to detect child pornography, content that kids don't belong in, nor do they have the ability to detect minors accessing their sites and seeing things that are just way too soon.
Yeah.
So,
And Maya, just on that point, when you say it can't be a human solution, it's because some of these sites have got hundreds of millions of interactions on a daily basis. And having 20, 30, 50, 100, 200 people in a room somewhere in Manila or somewhere in Phoenix, where the only thing they're doing is looking at images and deciding yes or no, is archaic. Now, by the way, it's torture. Actually, whatever you're paying these people, it's torture. Like, there's no way somebody can walk away from a job like that without being damaged. But it's also archaic because you
right,
can never deal with more than 2 or 3 or 4%. So even though the first reaction of everybody is, well, they had it on their side, good riddance, they deserve it. Actually, the more intelligent reaction is, they actually were facing an impossible task in many cases. And different companies react in different ways. Some of them do a terrible job because they know it's impossible. Others try, but both are faced with a severe disadvantage because there just wasn't the technology out there to be able to properly source and find if either there is any inappropriate images of children in a place that they shouldn't be online, or if there are even children that are looking at inappropriate sites that they shouldn't be looking at.
right. And you know what? The character arc with Pete was really started as a business thing. Like, I just saw this business situation. I thought it was interesting. I looked into it, realized it's a widespread problem, not a couple of bad actors. And then it was a tech moment where I was like, this is a tech solution. And I was looking, like you said, into the archaic ways it's being done now. And then it became an emotional buy in. I started the company with a slight emotional buy in, but like, of course, this is an issue that needs to be solved. But then I realized, like, this is my purpose. I don't know if anyone listening is spiritual, but like this is destiny. If people come to the planet to do something, like this is my rock to die on.
Sweet.
Yeah, and specifically because it just made my life make sense, you know, horrible things happen to good people. But it kind of made the path make sense. Like this was the come up from maybe a darker origin. So it went business problem, technical kind of solution, and then no, this is, you know, the startup pressure, like this is worth it. So
And
that's kind of how it happened.
this is purpose and legacy that you're speaking about. And actually, very few humans. Look, I always think about this, and I talk about it many times. Very few people have the privilege to really get purpose and legacy. When you get purpose and a legacy for being involved, not being recognized to do it, but for being involved in something which is way bigger than yourself. Oh God, life is just fantastic. You don't get tired. You don't say things like, "Well, where were you while I was at work all day?" There is no work. This
Right.
is about saving the planet. This is about your life's destiny. So it's really important. So one thing is about saying, I need to fix this because it's fundamentally wrong. I don't think there's a person listening to this podcast who wouldn't think exactly the same thing. But quite another thing is to be able to create a solution that nobody in the industry had been able to create themselves. How did you do that?
That's a good question. So it's funny because nowadays our product looks at faces, voices, and bodies, right? To detect children in user profiles and in content. But really, what got me starting the business was when I realized it came to mind like this. I had a technical kind of route that I realized no one was doing. And that's body proportions. So actually, if if the listener knows, like um as humans, our skulls don't really grow much or shrink much as we age. But of course, our body proportions do. So looking at
Yeah.
that ratio of a head to shoulders can tell you if there's a kid or an adult in front of us. And then I realized everyone's doing face and nothing else. And they're doing face really simply.
A
And so,
face is very difficult. It's incredibly
right,
difficult. Like when I was 19, I looked 14. Like I just did, or
right.
15. I couldn't get into a bar until I was 21, 22. I mean, heck, we got some angels, some great friends of mine, Clark Landry, and like you would have looked at Clark today, and Clark must be in his 40s, and like she looks 27, 20. So the face is actually an awful false positive or negative because they're so different for so many people until you get older, in which case it becomes more obvious. But I've never, ever, ever heard of anybody looking at body proportions until I spoke to you.
Yeah, and like you're saying, it's difficult because we actually hired a lot of researchers on our team, like people with a really academic background. And age estimation is a huge research problem right now. Like it's not like this solution exists in academia and the business world hasn't caught up. Like we're really doing things that academic people are trying to figure out. Same goes for voice. Um, and with faces, we realized, you know, in the last 2 years, ML has come onto the scene around the time that P came out. So this is a very new approach versus human moderation. But the way that everyone's doing it is they're treating the face as one data point. We actually break it down into the eyes as a data point, the nose, the mouth, the cheekbones, and 30 other features. And so we get a whole lot of data that our machine learning runs on. So that's really how we started doing face, and it's paid off big time with outperformance.
And tell me what happened then. So you saw the problem, you then started to create the solution and build it, but it can't have been easy to build. How did you do that? Did you do much of the development yourself? Did you bring in people in the team with you? How long did it take? How hard was it to get it right? And I can't believe you got it right the first time. And many of these things I know because we've invested, but I think the story is very powerful. And sometimes looking back, these things seem easier than they actually were.
Oh yeah, that's that's a great point.
I actually I don't want to bring you all the way through PTSD, but there's some, right? Because it has to have been brutal.
Yeah,
Even I'm just imagining your first conversation when you're saying, "Hey, you know, this is really bad. It's terrible. I think I can fix it." So it's like, "Oh, hang on.
yeah,
All of these big people out here with really smart with a computer degree, like they can't fix it, but like you got it." Actually, I
Yeah,
think I do because I'm really brilliant. But going from that moment to the money that you need to start building what you need
right.
to put together to the team, talk us through just the challenges in that journey.
Yeah, I think a point you're touching on is skepticism, right? If the
Hmm.
internet is this big and these companies have multiples of billions of dollars, how is this not solved? And how is Peak the one to solve it of all, of all the billions of people in the world?
Hmm.
And there's a two-prong answer to that. First of all, before anyone else believed in Peak, I knew that this was going to work. So I bootstrapped the company as long as possible. Like I put every egg possible in this basket. All of my money, all of the money I could find around the place and between the couch cushions, like before anyone else could really see not just the problem, but why we were the solution. I knew we had to get this off the ground, and I had no doubt in my mind that this was going to work. So for the first bit, we believed in it before anyone else did. And then we started building out the product and getting people to see, oh, this works. Um, what companies are finding, so we're in conversations with one of the biggest dating apps in the world. And they used to be a really DIY culture. So their first approach to finding underage profiles was to start building their team out themselves. They got this team of their own machine learning engineers with their big budget to start solving this issue. First of all, they realized it's tougher than they thought, and they need a bigger team than a couple of ML engineers. Then they realized, wait, we're a dating company. Why are we allocating resources to this issue that we want to outsource? There's no good way to outsource it until now, which is why they're talking to us. But that's not their bread and butter. Like, this is our niche, you know?
I like it. It's like, screw you. I know what I'm doing. We're going to build this thing. And you're right. It's not that people don't have an incentive to fix it. It's just the fact that it's not their main job. Like Facebook's main job is to drive revenue from advertising, right? A slightly ancillary job is to make sure that people are happy enough on their platform so that they can continue to drive revenue from advertising. And of course, having things like inappropriate pornography for any age group is not something that they want on their platform. It's an entire business on its own,
Right,
right? So they prioritize, but they don't prioritize. So
right.
for you to come in with one focus, one solo core focus, and then so how long did it take you to build this?
So we've been around for 2 years now, a year and some change, let's say. Um, and it took us, we've been building like kind of in iterations. So where we are now, it took exactly as long as we've been living to do. But the first version of our product, it took until August of last year to really get something working off the ground. We called it like MVP one. Um, yeah, out of many
You're such
MVPs to follow.
you're such a developer.
Yeah,
It's like anybody, this by the way, just a curious fact for everybody, the difference between a business development person and someone who is a deeply conscious development stroke ML specialist is the business development's like, yeah, this is our alpha MVP. And well, someone like you will be like, it's our MVP one.
exactly,
There's more to
exactly.
come. But you've
So
had you've had tremendous success with this, right? Because you've iterated, you fixed it, you kept on iterating and adapting it and bringing it out to market, and then you started to get your first validation, right? Which was that you started to find inappropriate images using the technology itself, and platforms started to listen to you. And this is a very important point for all investors who are listening to this, because there are all of you. Actually, in some cases, there are some people who are moved by emotion, and then you need logic to layer on top. And there's some people who are on logic. In all of you, everybody would be emotional about this topic. Anybody who has a kid, it just is. It's so I don't even know, like sickening. I don't know, worse, terrible, awful. It's just like something we don't even want to think about. So the fact that you're doing it, like everybody's going to be giving you a big round of applause, right? But moving into the numbers, this is where it gets interesting as well, because there are other investors who are going to say, look, Brian, we got to make sure this thing can get up to a couple of $1 million a month in revenue, or no matter what we want to do for the kids, it's not going to be able to come through. So it must have been just wonderful for you when those first POCs started to come through and you started to build those relationships with the large platforms who said, help.
Yes. And you know what? At the very start, in regards to validation and that story, at the very start, it was exciting. It was so exciting to get POCs. But POCs are, highly curated by the company. Like, here's what data we want to test. We know the results, etc. Most recently, we had a validation in the real world. So one of the top social media platforms out there, which has a human moderation team. It has some technology already installed and are even building out their own data science team because they need to solve this issue. We found in their live, publicly accessible platform in a small scrape, we found over 175 posts of child pornography, and it was severe. It was legitimate. The craziest thing is that some of these posts were from 2015, 2017. So they're struggling to find this content, and it's really validating to see that we in the real world can detect things that human moderators, thousands of them, aren't finding, and the other tech out there that's already installed is not finding. An interesting data point from there was those 175 posts accumulated together 600,000 likes. Like, it's not just that this content is being thrown out there, it's being engaged with. It's being reposted, let's say, it's being liked, it's being
And
shared.
the thing is, like, every time that happens, the youth are abused again. Every time somebody else sees it, every time
Oh
somebody
yeah,
else likes it, every time somebody else shares it, it's happening all over again. So this stuff is sickening, but this stuff is very real. And I remember even when we were looking at the enemy of the consumer, which is all of you people listening, by the way. And that enemy for me is the fact that the moment the internet was born, we opened the door, very, very, very big door for our kids. And we said to our kids, you're going to be spending most of your time here, and we are not going to protect you. We're making a conscious effort not to protect you.
right,
And some parents might say, well, Brian, I've got tracking software on my kids and I'm working. No, you don't. You can't. It's not like some people will be making more of an effort and some people will be less proficient on digital. But I promise you, none of you are in the same league as your kids, and none of you are in the same league as the people that want to do bad things to your kids. The one thing that we all know for a fact is that this is a terrible, terrible, terrible place when it comes to the abuse of children. And the other thing we know for a fact is there is literally nothing on the market right now that has got any level of protection, especially when we're talking about ethnic minorities, which
right,
is such a huge percentage of the planet.
right. And it goes it goes so far beyond just child pornography, because a lot of parents might say, well, I know my kid isn't exposed in that way. I can tell you it's nearly 80% of kids will be exposed to adult content that they're way too young to see by the time they're 16. So this issue stretches across all parents, any one of us that has a little sister, a baby cousin. um, it's all across the board. And you're right, it affects disproportionately minorities. The reason for that is every tech solution, you'll hear this buzzword, machine learning bias. They work well on white people, and a lot of the time specifically white men, and then they just fail on other categories. We were really cognizant of that fact. So around MVP4, let's say, so a couple of months ago, we released a race detector and race specific models. So
Amazing.
we actually work specifically with data sets of minorities, channel that content, and it makes a huge difference, especially when someone considers that the major majority of child pornography is generated in some Latin American and Southeast Asian countries. So it
Sure.
that race is has to
It's
be accounted
important.
for. Has to be
It's
accounted for.
it's important. So you'll get it, right? You'll get it. Like, come on. We could talk about this for another hour, but you get it. You get it. It's bad. It's there, it's huge, it's more than you ever thought that it could possibly be, and it's not going anywhere. It's actually going to get 10 times worse before this thing gets better because there's so many friggin' sickos in the world and there's nothing we can do about it, right? But there is something we can do about making sure that our kids are kept away from this on every single level. So, you all agree it's wonderful. Maya's awesome. We're so pleased we invested. Now, let's move to the logical side a little bit further. Let's start talking about the revenue generation model you're going to have. If we know we need to get your revenue to a couple of $100,000 a month and then a couple of $1 million a month, how do you drive revenue? And by the way, saying this in the context of the fact that like that large internet company got fined $600 million, I think we already also get the fact that large companies with a very great user base are not going to have a problem paying a certain amount of money per user if they feel that it's going to protect them from these fines, which are going to come their way. But talk to us in maybe a little bit more specifics as to how that works.
Right. So to touch on what you had just said, I mean, the biggest company has $3.7 billion a year allocated for this issue. So
Wow.
they're really dedicated. It's not just even regulatory fines, it's customer retention, user experience, right? Um, all of these different factors. So how Peak works is we're an API. So there's all these tools that moderators sit in and they click around and they sift through content. We're not changing their workflow. Anytime that someone posts a picture or video onto a site or creates a profile, it gets filtered through our API. And then it either posts or it gets flagged for a moderator. And then the tool that they already know and sit in is now prioritizing their queue. So instead of sorting through all these random posts looking for a needle in the haystack, they get the most likely content, the most dangerous content first, and they're actually able to hit quotas and protect their users.
No bueno. And how much can that turn into for you? So if we're saying, okay, you're going to protect them, they'll pay per user. How do you see the scaling over the next 2 to 3 years?
Mm. So we're tackling the most at risk companies first that are getting hit the hardest. And that's already around 3 billion minimum in terms of a market. But the whole market for real-time minor detection, so any platform where people are posting or making profiles, that's over $18 billion of content to be sifted through.
Yeah, and just imagine, I'm going to mention someone that we haven't seen anything on their platform because, well, at least I haven't because I haven't looked. But with the other platforms, it's difficult because so much has been found. But even just take like the enormous growth of TikTok, how can they possibly protect? They can't. There's too many. There's way too many. There's not just hundreds of millions anymore. There's tens of billions of posts every single day. Impossible. No moderation team. So think about it like this: protecting the users is per user charge, or it's going to be a monthly charge, depending what they negotiate. The potential fees, stroke downside, stroke risk to humanity is in the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year for these companies. For them to pay out hundreds of thousands of dollars or early millions of dollars a year is not an obscene amount of money for them to pay to be kept safe. Maya and her team are right in that moment right now. They are negotiating the terms with some of the biggest sites in the world, and that is only going to grow. The round that she's building has got one opportunity, which is now, and this will take it through for the majority, all the way at least up to Series A. And I'm not even sure, based on the profits this can bring in, if there's even really going to be a need for a Series A. But tell us a little bit about kind of how you see this round, how much you're raising, where that's going to take you to in the future, and how you see that growing the company. And you're just speaking specifically really to investors about how their investment will grow.
Yeah, 100%. So right now, we are raising $2 million in a safe round. As I mentioned, Peak has been bootstrapped to this point. It's 100% founder owned to date. Um, but really, what we need is to scale. We need to grow and we want to grow fast. So we have this incredible product, and it's gotten the biggest companies in the world across adult entertainment, gaming, and social media very excited. But we're a team of machine learning engineers, and we need to expand our sales team to get those outbound leads. And we need our marketing team. We need those inbound leads. We want to lower our customer acquisition cost and get that lifetime value scaling, especially with a better product market fit across the product itself. That being said, in terms of our priorities, number one, get that revenue team off the ground. Number two, keep honing in on that product market fit with improving our tech. And number three, get this runway and scale really smart. We're not trying to allocate resources. I think the second biggest reason that startups fail is poor hiring decisions.
Mhm.
So we want to be really strategic, listen to the market, listen to the customer, and make sure that we're channeling things in the right direction.
And get the right people. And how can people contact you, Maya?
People can contact me by email, maya@peak.watch, or they can go on our website and we have a contact form. Our site is peak.watch. They can also find me on LinkedIn and maybe carrier pigeon if they're really dedicated.
It's not hard. She's up 19 hours a day on this. And you've recently partnered with one of the top influencers in Latin America, who's one of the top sexologists in Latin America and one of the top psychologists. And that has had her own TV show for the last 20, 25 years. And I know from personal interaction that that person is very much dedicated to taking this to the very highest levels of Mexican government and then onwards to Latin American government as well. This thing is about to blow up. Look, we've invested in the company because we believe deeply in Maya. We believe very much in the mission that she's working on. We believe in the opportunity in the market, and we're here to invest in unicorns. So we believe in this being a unicorn in the future. So you can reach out to Maya, or you can hit me up always. You know you can, Brian@expertdojo.com. And I'm really happy to talk through our diligence and our reasoning behind the investments we made. Until that time, Maya, you're a beast. You're doing something awesome in the world. Thank you for letting us be part of your journey.
Thank you so much. So excited to go on this unicorn journey with you guys. You've been amazing and super excited to meet other people that align with our mission.
Sweet. That's right.